Welcome back to Fashion here. So today I'm going to be doing my preview for the 2025 Australian Grand Prix, the first race of this new season of Formula One. So excited, can't wait to get started. So first, starting this preview off, we're going to be taking a look at the track for this Grand Prix. So Albert Park Street Circuit, we've been racing here for quite a long time. 4 DRS zones on this track, 14 corners. Best places to make an overtake, I think with the new layout, traditionally you would say turn 1, perhaps turn 3, but I think with the new layout, I think actually turn 9, turn 11 are actually pretty decent chances, pretty decent places to make an overtake, and I think in fact last year they were actually the most common corners to overtake at. Now, taking a look at some more stats about the circuit, 5.278 kilometers, and we're expected to have 58 laps on Sunday. Really hope we get the full race distance this weekend, and we'll get to why I'm concerned about that in a bit. Now, race lap record, a 1:19.813 set by Charles Leclerc in 2024. Of course, with the new layout, there's only been 3 races, I believe, with this layout. So again, makes sense why the race lap record would be from this past year and not from 2020, 2021, for example. The average speed of that fastest lap at 238 kilometers an hour, which is actually the 4th fastest of the 24 tracks on this year's calendar. Downforce rating from 0 to 1, lowest downforce, so Monza spec. Monaco, a 1 highest spec, it's a 0.11, so relatively low downforce. Full throttle, 77% of your lap. And in terms of corner tendency, it then tends to have a bit more slow corners than fast corners. Now, taking a look at your pole conversion rate, 71%, so pole position is pretty important at this track. And because historically speaking, and I think also with the current layout we have, overtaking is very difficult. So really the only possibility, really the best possibility of winning the race if you don't start from pole is through an undercut or a strategy mistake from your rival in front. Now, because we have so many rookies on this year's grid, new stat that I'm going to be including in these previews is the rookie out-qualifying percentage, and that is the percentage of times that rookies out-qualify their non-rookie teammates at each track that we go to on the F1 calendar. So for Australia, it's 30.6%, and that's data going all the way back to 2010, I believe, and that's 15th out of the 24 tracks. So pretty low. The fact that Australia is either the first or one of the first races of the season obviously means it's going to be quite low. And historically, it's not a track where F1 has had feeder series, but that has definitely changed in recent years. So most of the rookies, I believe all of them except for Lawson actually, have raced at this track before in Formula 2. Taking a look at the safety car profitability, 64%, so relatively high. So more often than not, we do have a safety car here, and it being a street circuit, walls being relatively close, that's not a big surprise. And the first race here was held in 1996. Now looking at the tires for this weekend, soft C5, medium C4, and hard C3. I would usually say softest 3 tires in the Pirelli range, but Pirelli have actually made a C6 tire. Not sure where we're going to see it. We might only see it at Monaco, I believe. But I'm going to have to make sure I don't say that when introducing the tires this year. But yes, these are historically the 3 softest tires in the range. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we can already pick out from just this one race what teams are perhaps better with certain tires, which ones are not as good with soft tires, for example. Now, taking a look at the schedule for this weekend and taking a look at your weather forecast as of recording of this video. So for Friday, FP1, 12:30 in the afternoon, so right afternoon. Local time, FP2, 4 p.m. local time. Qualifying for F2, 5:30 p.m. local time. And the weather for that FP2 session, 23 degrees and partially sunny. Moving on to Saturday, FP3, 12:30 p.m. Formula 2 sprint race, 2:15 local time, and then qualifying at 4 p.m. Weather quite different from Friday. The expected temperature for qualifying is 33 degrees and cloudy, so very, very hot. Even by, I think, summer standards. I think it's basically, it's fall in Australia this time of year. So again, I do think it's a little bit on the warm side, but very, very different conditions from Friday and very different from what we saw in Bahrain. Sunday, however, again, quite different from the 2 previous days. So Formula 2 feature race, 11:30 in the morning, and then Grand Prix will start, or should start, at 3 p.m. local time. Temperature for the start of the Grand Prix, 23 degrees, but 50% chance of rain. Looks like there could be heavy thunderstorms, but based on what I've been reading online, Melbourne weather changes quite a bit. So we can get to Grand Prix Sunday and it could be sunny and 25 degrees. So it could be very, very different from the forecast, and we're just going to have to wait and see. And again, since it is the first race and we've been waiting so long, really hope we actually get a Grand Prix and we don't have a Spa 2021 type situation on our hands. Now, of course, for this weekend, 3 F1 debutants: Gabriel Bortoleto at Sauber, Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, and Isaac Hadjar at Racing Bull. So it'll be interesting to see how those 3 drivers do, as well as the other 3 rookies who have already made their F1 debut. Now, taking a look at last year's race, then finishing this video off with predictions. So last year, Carlos Sainz win, his one of 2 wins, I believe, last season. Leclerc second, so Ferrari 1-2, and Lando Norris rounding out the podium in third. Of course, 2 real big moments from that race were, of course, Max Verstappen's brake failure. Brake failure very, very early on in the race, I believe lap 1 or lap 2, and that forced him to retire, I believe, lap 3. So really a non-factor for Verstappen was that race, and that mechanical failure basically stopped his opportunity to get a second consecutive, basically 10 race win streak. So that second win streak was stopped at 9, but of course would go on to win several more Grand Prix that season. Of course, the other big moment of the race at the very end was, of course, George Russell's big crash, caught out by Fernando Alonso, supposedly. And of course, Alonso was given that pretty controversial penalty, which dropped him from 6th on the checkered flag to 8th at the end of the race. So taking a look at best and worst qualifiers at this track, I've changed the format up a little bit this year. So instead of simply looking at best percentages overall and worst percentages, I found that you basically ended up with many of the same drivers at best and worst. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to look at each driver's percentage relative to their career percentage. And for Alonso and Hamilton, it's only going to be the data post 2010. So it doesn't include prior to that, just because of refueling qualifying data that back then is not quite as useful as it is now. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. So number 1 best qualifier, Alex Albon, 33% above his career average, and at this track, his median qualifying gap is negative 0.595. So it means that his median qualifying gap is 0.6 over his teammate. Number 2, Lando Norris, 29%, median overtaking, median qualifying gap 0.302 seconds. And number 3, Yuki Tsunoda, plus 17%. And a median qualifying gap of negative 0.236 seconds. Now, taking a look at the worst qualifiers, worst qualifier, a bit of a surprise, Charles Leclerc, 45% worse than his career average, and at this track, his median qualifying gap is a plus 0.09. So I think at this track, it's something like 24%, and his career's 64%, something like that. So basically, he's much, much worse qualifier at Australia than he would all of his races in his career. Now, number 2 and number 3, Pierre Gasly, negative 23%, and meeting a qualifying gap of positive 0.144, and number 3, Fernando Alonso, negative 5%, but honestly, negative 5% is not that big of a difference. At this track, he still outqualifies his teammates by 0.402 seconds. Now, one last new thing that we're going to be doing before we finish, go into our predictions, is I'm going to be using I'm going to be making qualifying predictions based on my quality model for each track that we go to this year, and it's going to be a dynamic model, so it's going to use basically the data that we get as races go along. So it's not going to just be the same every single race, and it's also going to basically use this track-specific data. So if a driver is better at certain tracks, then perhaps the gap that they would have over a teammate might be a little bit bigger than it would be elsewhere. Just a fun thing to do. We'll see how it goes. Most of these predictions are probably going to be wildly off just because of how big the margins of errors are. Sometimes you can have track limit deletions. You can have drivers caught out by yellow flags, red flags, that kind of thing. So again, just something fun to do for this video. So taking a look at the predictions for our first race in Australia, for McLaren, Lando Norris is predicted to outqualify Piastri by 0.2 of a second. Likewise at Ferrari, where Hamilton is expected to outqualify Leclerc by 0.2 of a second. At Red Bull, Verstappen is a favorite driver there, but not too big of a gap, 0.148 seconds. At Mercedes, Russell, gap of 0.173, for Aston Alonso for negative 0.165. At Alpine is Gasly with a 0.16. At Haas, actually it's Behrman with 0.071 seconds. At Racing Bulls, Tsunoda is the driver who's predicted to win the qualifying head-to-head with a predicted margin of 0.483. Williams, Albon, and then finishing up with Bortoleto at Sauber, predicted to outqualify Hülkenberg on his F1 debut by just shy of 0.1 of a second. So finishing up this video with some predictions for the Grand Prix itself. We basically only have testing to go off of, and based on the fact that, Norris is pretty good at this track, I'm going to predict, and given that McLaren are quite good, I'm going to predict them to do pretty well at this track. In addition, second group, not really sure who's going to come in on top, so I think Max Verstappen third place is a pretty safe bet, and then I'm going to go with McLaren 1-2 with Piastri second and Norris in first. So there you go. There are my predictions and my preview for the 2025 Australian Grand Prix. If these predictions come to pass, it would be the first podium for Australian at the Australian Grand Prix, something that has not happened despite the pretty long history of this race. So yeah, that's something I'm definitely hoping happens this weekend as well. Just a small piece of news to finish off this video. McLaren have signed Oscar Piastri to a new long-term contract, which is believed to take him basically contract him until the end of the 2028 F1 season. So it seems like McLaren have basically locked down their lineup, Piastri, Norris, for the foreseeable future. It'll be interesting to see how that teammate pairing, goes this coming weekend, as McLaren are basically look like title favorites at this point. So there you go. There's my preview for the 2025 Australian Grand Prix. So thank you so much for watching, and bye.